Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am creating a ombre stamped sentiment along with this adorable pom-pom garland on the front of my card. And I'm featuring the Just Because stamp set from Neat and Tangled. And I love this big love you stamp. Now it very much feels Valentine's Day because of the colors that I'm using, but keep in mind that you could use other colors and use this stamp and this sentiment year round because it's always great to tell people you love them, right? So I'm starting out by mounting this large sentiment in my Mini Misty, and I am inking up just the right side of my stamp. It's the left side when I stamp it onto my paper, but just that portion or the beginning portion of this sentiment with some red ink. Now I'm going to take some hot pink ink and I'm going to ink the center of my stamp. And each time that I'm inking with a different color, you can see I'm taking that little dry cloth and I'm kind of blotting around the edges of the inking. And that's just going to take away any harsh lines that I might get from the edge of my ink pad. Now, once I've stamped the hot pink ink, I'm going to move on to a really light pink. And like I said, these very much are Valentine colors, but keep in mind, different colors can make this feel different for use throughout the year. So once I have the last portion of that sentiment inked up, I'm going to blot off the edges and then stamp that onto my cardstock. And then I'm going to clean this really well. Now at this point, I really thought I was moving on to the embossing, but then I realized that I didn't get a perfect stamped image on the upper part of that L. You can see I didn't get it quite right. So I'm going to clean this, I'm going to dry it, and then I'm going to blot on some more of that red ink on the top of the L, and I'm going to stamp it again. I didn't want all of my red to get too dark, so I didn't re-ink that entire area. And then while I was doing it, I decided I wanted to intensify a couple of those colors. So I went back in with the pink inks, inked up again in those areas, kind of blotted off the edges and re-stamped. And this time I really am moving on to the embossing. So I'm going to clean this stamp really well. I'm going to leave it in place in my Mini Misty and I'm going to heat set this stamping that I just did because I'm going to do some embossing over the top. I don't really know why I thought I had to heat set this. In the other example that I did for Neat and Tangled, I actually did partial embossing over the top, so I think my brain was still in the same place. You don't need to heat set this. Just prep it with a powder tool, ink it up with some Versamark ink, and then stamp right over the top of it again. This is going to put a layer of clear embossing ink over that ombre stamping that I did, and you're not going to be able to see the ink now. But I'm taking some clear embossing powder from Wow and I'm sprinkling that on, tapping off the excess, and then I'm going to heat set that. This is to serve two purposes. All of this embossing that I'm doing, and I'm doing like 3 or 4 layers of this clear embossing over the top of the ombre stamping, it's going to give this ombre stamping some real intensity. It's going to give it some shine and some dimension because I'm layering up so many layers of embossing powder, and that's what you're seeing me do here. But in addition to that, it's also going to act as a mask because I'm going to do some inking over the top of this with a stencil. And this embossing powder is going to protect the ink that's underneath from getting mixed up with the green ink that I'm going to ink over the top with. So it's kind of serving two purposes. Now this is 2 layers here and you can see I have a lot of dimension and shine, but you know, I'm one of those if 1 is good, then 10 is better kind of girls. I mean, you got to buy the shoe in every color if it fits, right? So I decided to go ahead and not stop at 2, but go ahead and do a 3rd layer of this clear embossing over the top. And this takes it from kind of shiny and kind of raised to really shiny and really raised. And you could really do this even more with more layers if you wanted to, but I decided that 3 was good. We didn't get quite to 10, but you know. And you can see the real shine and dimension I have here. It's just so beautiful. It looks, there's just something about multiple layers of embossing powder that just really, really, really makes it beautiful and shiny and super glossy. It looks wet is what it really does. It looks wet. So now I'm taking these stencils from Neat and Tangled and I have this life-changing blending brush from Picket Fence Studios and some meant to be ink from Catherine Pooler. And I am going to use this blending brush right over the top of these stencils to blend on this mint ink. And I'm just kind of creating a scattered heart pattern that starts kind of towards the right and kind of comes off to that lower left-hand corner. Now, I have to say, this is the first time that I've used these blending brushes, and I honestly don't know if there's a correct way to hold them. You can kind of see I'm changing my grip as I go throughout this process, kind of feeling what feels comfortable to me. You do what works for you. I'm all about you do you, right? So, I mean, however you want to hold this, I don't think it matters. But I did notice that the handle has a little bit of give in it. So I don't know if you hold it towards the end of the handle, if that keeps you from getting too heavy-handed, which raise your hand if you're a little heavy-handed. I am not just a little heavy-handed. I'm like a lot heavy-handed. So maybe that's why something like this is good for me. You can also see that it's taking me a little while to build up this ink. Now, because the ink blending goes kind of I feel like a little slower, like it takes a little while to build the intensity, but I also feel like you get a really smooth blending with these as well. And I'm going to be trying them out a little bit more in the future and kind of seeing what I think about them. Now, to clean them off, I'm just going to use a baby wipe. I'm going to clean off all the excess ink, and then I'm going to set it aside to dry. And that's a little tip I picked up from my friend Carly T. By the way, if you don't follow Carly T, you need to. I'm going to link her below because she's amazing, not only as a card maker, but she's a dear, sweet friend of mine, and I adore her. Now, once I have the blending done, I'm going to go ahead and work on creating my pom-pom banner. And I bought like a million pom-poms from Amazon a long time ago. So I may be making pom-pom banners from now until the end of time with all those pom-poms. But I'm going to show you how easy this is. I took an upholstery needle and I threaded some baker's twine. It's like some golden white baker's twine through the eye of the needle. And now I'm just taking these pom-poms and I am stabbing them with the needle and threading them onto this baker's twine. And it's really easy to create a little pom-pom banner like this. Now, I think this would be really adorable on any type of party card. I've used a rainbow version of this banner before with a teacher leading lady. I just think the pom-poms are so much fun. And you can see I've decided to use just red, pink, and white here to kind of tie in with the colors that I have in the stamping and going on the card. But making these little pom-pom banners, I think that's what you would call them, right? Is that what you would call them? I don't know. Leave it in the comments below if you would call this something differently. But these are so much fun in rainbow colors, or you could do it in all a single color. They really just add a lot of fun and a real feel of celebration to a card, I feel like. Now, something like this is definitely going to add a little bit of bulk, so this might not be a card that you would want to mail, or maybe you want to use a padded envelope or like a card box to mail this if you're going to mail it. But think of how cute this little pom-pom banner would be also on like a little gift bag or something like that. Just so much fun, and I mean, they're so easy to make. Now you can see once I get them onto the baker's twine, I can kind of slide them back and forth and kind of determine where I want them to be. Don't overplay with them because the pom-poms can start to kind of shred a little bit if you overwork them. And once I kind of get them positioned where I want them, I'm going to take some strong liquid adhesive and just squirt it behind each of these little pom-poms and a little bit on the corners of the twine where it's overlapping the card front. And then I'm going to place a heavy block on top of this and let it set up. Now, I did take my card base and die cut it with a stitched rectangle die before I attached that, so I just wanted to point that out. And now I'm going to work on a little banner grouping for the upper right-hand corner of this card. And I'm using the XOXO stamp. This is the smaller of the two that's included in the Just Because stamp set. And I've stamped it in some VersaFine Clair Nocturne black pigment ink onto some vellum. And then I just used some clear embossing powder over that. And I'm just trimming this down into a banner shape. And I just used my scissors for this. I just kind of I didn't bother bringing in my trimmer. I just kind of let it be a little free. Now you can see I have some gold cardstock and some pink on pink striped cardstock, and I've kind of created a little grouping there. And I secure them together with my tiny attacher because I find that I can get the angles just right and I don't have to worry about flipping them over and adding like adhesive to the back. Plus, I think the staple makes for a really cute addition on the card as well. Now that banner grouping, I'm going to hold that in place with some foam adhesive on the front of my card, and I'm going to flip this card front over and hold these little twine ends onto the back using some score tape. I just wanted them to be really nice and secure on the back of that card front. Now for my card base, I'm using some Hero Arts layering cardstock. It's cut to 4 1/4 by 11 and then scored at 5.5 inches to create a top folding A2 size card base. And then I'm going to use some foam adhesive to adhere my card front onto the card base. And to add just a little bit of sparkle and shine to this, because the embossing obviously wasn't enough for me, I'm going to add some sparkling clear sequins and a couple of these clear heart droplets from the Essentials by Ellen line. They are like the clear droplets, only they're heart-shaped, and they are so much fun. And I'm just using a little dot of glossy accents to hold all of those embellishments in place. So that completes my card for today. There were several techniques that we used on this. We used some kind of embossing powder masking, I guess, some ink blending. We made a little pom-pom banner. We did some ombre stamping, and we layered up all of that embossing powder to give that ombre stamp some really awesome gloss. And awesome gloss. Oh, we need to start using that. Instead of awesome sauce, it's awesome gloss, right? Okay, maybe not. But anyway, that completes my card for today. I really hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you enjoyed seeing a bunch of different techniques at work here. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. But head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, thanks for stopping by and spending time with me today. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of the card making and paper crafting video tutorials here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.